I released Life Not Supported in 2023, and since then it's sold over 10,000 copies and I've made about 60 updates, but this time I wanted to go bigger. Especially with the game's slow decline into mixed ratings, I wanted to see if a lot of new content all at once, instead of trickling new stuff, as well as fixing a lot of people's issues at once, would help bring the score up. The centerpiece of this update would be a new belt to explore, which would require a new wreckage type. In the lore, this area of orbit was reserved for the organic vaults, a mass storage of siege and such items that would be utilised after the terraforming stage of this new planet. Previously, you'd just find a new wreckage, walk straight in and unlock a recipe or blueprint at the terminal. With these new later wreckages, I wanted more interaction, so these new structures are locked behind a keypad. The code is on a sticky note, which is located at a nearby sub-wreckage. This lock and key system also ties in with the feeling that these vaults are secure. So you find the note, type in the code, and get access to 3 terminals and some materials that are exclusive to inside of these types of structures. More on the item specifics later. If you don't want to find the code, or simply can't, or there's a glitch or something, I added a way to bypass the keypad by breaking it with a crowbar, then hot wiring it with any electrical source you can build, including the potato battery. Now this isn't strictly told to the player straight away, but from watching people play the game for so long, I know that people often like to hit things with the crowbar when they're frustrated, so giving them an alternative way of accessing this new wreckage should lead to some interesting moments, and maybe alleviate some frustration in the process. New biomes were also needed to house these new wreckages, with new debris. In its current state, there are 2 types of debris. Objects you can just pick up, and those that need to be dislodged with a crowbar first. Given the SIP container is already in the game and a core part of moving liquids around, I thought it would be interesting to have liquid-covered scraps, where the water tension would surround the metal, requiring it to be scooped up before picking up the debris. So now you can get hydraulic fluid and such naturally in the game, in certain biomes. So, I like Minecraft. People have mentioned that some parts of the game seem inspired by Minecraft, which I suppose to some extent is true. One aspect that sticks out from that game is the rare biomes, most notoriously the mushroom biome. It's visually quite different from the rest and feels special when you come across one, so I thought, given that this new belt contains Civilization's feud future, why not add a rare biome filled with the remains of maybe a pollen and bee carrier? You could have globules of honey floating in space that you could suck up with the sip, and so the pollen biome was born. The new honey item would make a great ingredient for medicinal purposes, finally adding a proper method to you getting your health back, and some sort of remedy concoction could be made to remove negative status effects. For the other biomes, you have the splatter, which contains much of the organic matter that escaped when the organic vaults were destroyed, as well as a fine brown mist, not poop, to give some visual variance. There's also the frozen wastes, regions of high density ice, some of which has surrounded other objects and needs dislodging before picking up. And there's the biomes that were formed from the broken structures of the vaults, such as the Seed Vault Debris Field, a very imaginative name. Now that the biomes had been created, it was time to work out the purpose for exploring them. Why venture out into an even more dangerous belt when earlier locations provide everything you need to survive? It was time to add airlocks to this space game. I've been putting this off for literal years, as the building system is a bit janky and I didn't know if I could pull it off. After weeks of scrambling to figure out how to detect an airtight space, I ended up using a recursive flood fill algorithm, which only looks at the new airlock floors, walls and doors to find a hole into space. The current system allows for airlocks up to 100 square cells. If the count gets that high, it assumes it's broken out into space. To make an airlock, there are now 4 new structural components you can build: a floor, wall with window, and the classic double door. With the airlocks in, it only made sense to make new versions of all the blueprints in the game that provided their own airlock, which will work inside of the new structures without the constant air tank input. This basically just boiled down to making a new farm type in a new oven, which means that blueprints now have the ability to probe if they're inside or outside, as well as if they have a source of air from their environment. This new airlock business needs a new material bottleneck to make sure players wouldn't just enter this new belt and create a giant airlock cube straight away. Enter the humble dandelion. A little research online revealed that it looks like you can technically make an amount of latex from processing the dandelions, so they can be the new plantable object in the farms, making rubber a bottleneck ingredient for airlock structures. Side note, I made this bottleneck way too tight on release, but it's a bit more balanced now. What didn't help is that these dandelions would drop potatoes half the time, and I didn't realise until much later. Oops. Something I want to add for a long time is more food options, not just the potato and dehydrated food pouches. I added carrot, turnip, wheat and corn to the farms that could grow potato, and added it so you could grow mushrooms in a new farm type, but each new batch required a new mycelium block, only found behind the locked doors mentioned earlier, which then required both an indoor and outdoor version of the farm blueprint. I added this sun shader blocking thing to the outside mushroom farm to protect it from radiation and because I thought it looked cool. Now in the previous farm, the one unlocked at the start of the game, a basic hydroponics liquid is required to grow plant life, but with these new indoor farms it made sense to have a higher tier substance for growth. So I made a composter. You can gather any organic matter that you have stocked up on and turn it into this new substance. This leads to the organic matter that drops in the splatter biome to also have some use. I also added a cookie recipe to the game, which you get late in the Gamma Belt unlocks. You can only eat these inside an airlock, and it gives you the new energized status effect, which buffs your movement speed. I also added a well-fed status effect, which reduces the rate your hunger goes down, gotten from having a large meal, such as a stew. Weakness can be gotten from consuming dodgy food, and is the opposite of energized. These were fairly easy to add to the game since I'd already added some status effects previously, and I'd just made equipables, such as a variety of helmets, which affect stats such as these. Oh, and food poisoning, when you eat something disgusting. It reduces your heal over time, but you produce more feces. Speaking of movements, I added a new rocket type. This one uses hydrogen bottles that can be replaced. Instead of just strapping an oxygen tank to your ship, opening the nozzle and hoping for the best, this new rocket can be rotated with this subtle handle. To get hydrogen, I just made this blueprint that splits water into its core components. It spins to add pressure to the water so the bubbles actually flow in one direction to be captured, else it would look silly. Something I spent a long time doing is fixing previously found bugs and adding small requested features, but none of them were wacky or interesting, stuff like adding a VSync option to the main menu. I guess something that was interesting perhaps is that you can hit debris now with a crowbar and it'll move slightly. I've seen many people throughout the years hit the debris and kind of be a bit disappointed when nothing happens. It adds a bit of polish. So the update completed, it was time to upload it to Steam and see if people liked it, and if it would move the needle on the overall review score at all. So it turns out, I made a major mistake. There was a bug that was deleting people's save games, more specifically, their ships. After a few hours of panicking, I saw that the cause of this was that if a player had a cooked potato in the oven in a previously saved game, the new version would panic and not know what it was, because it had to change the code for the oven to accept the new food types, and it would just fail to load the ship. Then when the player saved the game again, it would overwrite and the ship would be deleted. So I fixed that and uploaded the patch immediately, along with the Linux version that I'd previously forgotten to upload. Thankfully, everyone's save file, as far as I'm aware, was safe. A while ago I foresaw something like this happening, so implemented a backup system which saves the last 6 versions of a save file, so it can be rolled back if something terrible happens. It's a little fiddly to roll back the files, but I made a quick guide, and people seem to be thankful for such a safeguard. Over the following week, other bugs cropped up, such as the composter ding, whatever this is. I guess the big question now is, do people like the update? Has it touched the review score number at all? So far it would seem yes in all cases. There's been a lot of positive comments since the update's been out, which has been lovely, despite some of the issues we've had along the way. And the overall score of the game has increased by about 1.5%, which still results in a mixed score, but it's only marginally off a positive one. The game is currently on sale, link in the description.